Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome back to the Onyx Tavern Vlog series on Power Rangers Dino Charge. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, and today we're going to be talking about Episode 6, The Tooth Hurts. Now, before we actually get into analyzing the episode, I just want to make a quick aside about the title of this episode. Not only is a bad pun, I just started to kind of question with this episode, and I probably should have done with several others, but I started to question with this episode these naming conventions, because while it's a bad pun, and yes, it does reference the cavity monster that's in the episode, I just wish Power Rangers had better titles for their episodes. You know, once in a while we get the things like The End of Time, End of the Power Rangers, Forever Red. We get these good titles, but for every good title we get, we end up with a food fight or high five or something like that. A lot of the first season titles were pretty goofy. I just wonder why we just can't have these grand titles in episodes, why it can't be something really cool. Why does it have to be such a bad pun? Because I thought to myself, you know, if I could rename this episode, what would I call it? And I didn't come up with too many alternatives, but when I analyzed the theme of this episode, which we'll talk about, which is really about, you know, two different paths leading you to the same conclusion, I immediately thought to myself, well, why isn't it called The Two Paths? Because that tells you the theme of the episode. Yes, it is kind of on the nose, but there are a lot of episodes to do that. And granted, not every episode can be as great as The City on the Edge of Forever, but still, I think we should be trying here. And also, the reason I brought this aside up about the titles is something that's a little bit odd, at least in my experience. When we were talking about last week's episode, Breaking Black, before I even actually watched the episode, it was my assumption, based on the title, that the episode would not only be about the Black Ranger, but the episode would focus on somehow physically, physically, emotionally, or psychologically breaking the Black Ranger. You know, how would that be done? You know, were they going to break his back like Bane and Batman? Were they going to psychologically torture him or something like that? And no, that never happened in the episode. It was about him, you know, and his attention and things like that. But the title suggested otherwise. Then several people had brought it to my attention that the title was based off the show Breaking Bad, which starred Bryan Cranston. As we all know, got his first start on Power Rangers in the famous role of, well, two monsters. But the thing is, it never occurred to me to think of it as a parody title or based off the show Breaking Bad. And for the record, I do not watch Breaking Bad, and I choose not to watch Breaking Bad. It's just not a show that I'm interested in. But the fact that they named it Breaking Bad should suggest to you, the audience, what the episode is going to be about, and it didn't pay off with it. What was the point of naming this episode after a show that has absolutely nothing to do with Power Rangers except an actor 22 years removed from the role that he was in? I just don't get it. There seems to be an odd naming complex with Power Rangers, and once in a while, again, we get some good episode titles, but it seems almost they go out of their way to make a bad title, because again, it's called The Tooth Hurts. Really? I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. But let's actually talk about the episode and not the title of it. Now, I'm a little curious on a number of things in this episode. Now, again, as I said, the theme of the episode is what Keeper says to Riley, taking two different paths to get to the same location. Now, we can deconstruct and break that down a multitude of ways, but that's not what we're going to go ahead and do, because Keeper actually has a good point in the episode, where Chase goes on his instincts and does what he feels is right. We have Riley, who wants to analyze things and have a plan of attack based on that. So, and I know you guys love it when I make Star Trek references. In a sense, Chase is like Captain Kirk, and Riley is a lot like Spock. That's just kind of how it is here. And I like that they're setting up that dynamic. It seems that by the end of the episode, that is kind of resolved somehow, But given the footage that we have of Q Green and Q Black, it's entirely possible this could be something that runs throughout the series. Because I do like the idea of friction between two of the Rangers, and these two different ideas of how to approach a situation I think is great. If Riley's going to be the analytical one and Chase is just going to, go off his gut feelings and instincts, well, that's a great chance for drama, particularly if we have both of them working closely together, as we have in the Sentai footage. So it would make sense to bring them together, but also have them, with conflicting ideologies on how to go ahead and work. So I do like that aspect there. But the episode doesn't really spend as much time on that particular plot point. I mean, again, it is the theme of the episode, but the things that I'm really curious about in this episode have really nothing to do with our two characters. I mean, there are a lot of things we can go ahead and talk about, because again, I think it was kind of well done. I just wish it wasn't resolved by the end. I wish there was something that we would continue out into the series, but how we actually get into this plot is kind of odd, because we have two different things going on. One that's not very important, and one that is extremely important, but is relegated to a single line of dialogue. And what do I mean? Well, before we actually get going with the cavity plot, when it actually starts taking effect on people, we have the Rangers about to head out to a site. They got a map. They're talking about their game plan, what they're going to go ahead and do, because they are starting to seek the gold inner gem. Okay, that's great. We know where that's going to go ahead and lead us. That is likely going to lead us to a Gold Ranger and a new Zord down the line. That's great. But before they can even get that taken care of, we have this cavity monster plot. And that's what the bulk of the episode is about. We talk about we're going to go for the gold Iron Gem, but by the end of the episode, we've completely dropped that plot line, and we're going to fight the cavity monster, and now we're going to go ahead and train and work out and do all this fun stuff at the track. Because it seems to me that, yes, if the cavity monster did not get involved in this episode, that's what they would be doing. They would be going after the gold Iron Gem. But why does the episode end with this forced resolution instead of them talking about going after the gold Iron Gem? Why is the end of the episode not the beginning of that? Why is that not happening? And let's talk about the villain's plot. Now, what I've realized about Sledge, for as interesting a villain as he is, he's no Lord Zed, but I assume that he's a better villain than Divatox. And what do I mean by that? So his fiance, Poisandra, is basically brought one of the prisoners out of the holding cell to bake her a cake, because her whole thing is she wants to get married to this guy, so everything she does is about getting married. That seems to be what's happening thus far. And so she creates this, she brings this monster out of the holding cell, bakes a cake, and he makes a special cake which automatically causes tooth pain in people, once they go ahead and eat the cake. Sledge finds out about this and decides to send down to make a cake to basically give the Rangers a toothache. And when you boil it down into that simplistic of terms, you really have to kind of question why they borrowed this from the Kyoryuja storyline, but also that they modified it. If we take a look at the original episode in which Kyoryuja was based, Canderilla and Lakiro were creating happiness out of people. That was the whole plot, was that the happiness that they created by people consuming the sweets and all that were fueling up, her power set, which is the powers of human joy. But the monster, and I'm trying to remember specifically how this was accomplished, but he basically transformed from this good sweetie guy into one of the sorrow type monsters, in which then his cake started to cause all this pain. I wish I could remember off the top of my head. I guess I have to go ahead and watch that episode. And that's how we got into the particular plot, because what the villains of Kyoryuger were doing that's significantly different than what the villains of Dino Charge are doing is that they were trying to collect human emotions as a power source. So it makes sense that we have this cavity monster who is making these sweets and then somehow through dark energy, whatever, is changed and then creating this sorrow in people. But no, our villains immediately come up with a plot to give the Rangers a toothache from this monster. And I know Sledge is just after the inner gems, but I don't see what his end game is exactly. How does giving the Rangers cavities, toothaches, whatever, and all that going to help him destroy them? Yeah, it's going to be difficult for them to fight, as we saw with Chase in this episode, who, by the way, did not eat the cake, just got zapped with it, which I think would have been a little bit more interesting if he had actually eaten the cake and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, how does that lead to this end goal of defeating the Rangers? I mean, what should have happened, and this is, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, he should have poisoned the cake, which is something you don't even need a monster for to begin with. Why couldn't he just have poisoned cake for the Rangers to go ahead and eat? Wouldn't that make more sense? Because they're dead. Then you can get the inner gems. Because if we take a look at Mesogog, and he has a similar thing going on with the Dino Gems in that series, Dino Gems, Inner Gems, yeah, they're kind of similar, and they have a good, same background in a way. Mesogog had to kill the Dino Teens in order to get their Dino Gems. So I assume Sledge has to do the same thing, and I don't see how giving them cavities is really going to accomplish that. When, again, he could just poison the cake. Not to mention, if he's able to infiltrate the museum and do this, he could have done a lot more damage. Because doesn't it make sense that Sledge might have, left a bomb there? Because that's what Keeper did to him, so why doesn't he do that? And it's also kind of odd that he knows their identities and where they are to even attempt this. So, okay, let's talk about something else that's very curious. So, in the middle of the episode, when Poisandra and Curio are talking to Cavity, which I have to credit them this much, they just named him Cavity. They didn't give him some weird name that's a mixture of two things, or Alpha Cavity, or any crazy thing like that. They just call him Cavity. I kind of like that simplicity with him. He kind of turns against her and says, "My loyalty is to Sledge." Why? Why is your loyalty to Sledge? Because let's talk about the events that led up to this. He was a prisoner on Sledge's ship for 65 million years. Let's not forget about that. Poisandra let him out to make a cake, and then Sledge sends him down to give the Rangers toothaches. Now, why would he be loyal to Sledge? Is Sledge going to release him? That seems to be what's been happening with the previous monsters. I'll let you go free if you do this for me. But I don't think that builds loyalty to anyone. And it was Poisandra that pulled him out of jail in the first place. And she could have easily said, "You bake this cake for me, I'll let you go." While that is not established in the episode, I find it curious that that is what he says, that his loyalty is to Sledge, when we have no reason to believe that he would be loyal to him. I mean, I don't understand why these monsters feel the need to fight the Power Rangers when they could easily escape. I mean, why don't they escape? Maybe that's something for a future episode? And I also wonder what Cavity's crime is to get him in here, because it just seems to me that he is a monster who bakes cakes and also has the ability to make cakes that physically harm people. Which is another thing too. Poisandra says that she doesn't want a delicious cake. She wants a cake that's vile and disgusting and her guests wouldn't forget. Well, I also have to wonder which of your wedding guests are alive after 65 million years. I'm not going to let that one go. And I find it odd that we have to categorize our villains as being evil, as in thinking that things that taste delicious are therefore bad, and what tastes vile and disgusting to us is good for them. I never understood that. We've done that even all the way back in the first season. It's just kind of an odd thing. It's kind of like saying that an evil Wookiee in Star Wars is evil because he eats garbage and he thinks that cupcakes are the most vile thing that he's ever eaten. I don't know. It just seems kind of odd that you would categorize our villains that way. But yeah, what kind of crime did he have? Did he give somebody a toothache? And what government is sanctioning him, to be arrested, basically? Oh, no, this monster gave us a toothache by baking this cake. Arrest him. Put a bounty on his head. I'm not understanding that. What is this guy's crime? Seriously. And is his crime bad enough to warrant death by the Power Rangers? That is another discussion that we should be having. Because the Power Rangers are dealing out death and justice to criminals, yes. But I think some of us have seen Dog the Bounty Hunter. Not all those guys are convicted of murder and all that. So it just seems to me the Rangers are carrying out justice on people who don't deserve it. It's kind of like somebody who cheats on their taxes is given the death penalty. That seems to be what's happening here. But I'm getting too carried away, I think, in that, because the thing is, the episode is so simplistic, the resolution's so easy, that you have to think about these other things, because I really thought that our villains in the very first episode were set up well, but once we actually got into the logistics of what was going on, then things just really start falling apart. And I hope as we continue that things will go ahead and work out. Also to the plot, I will commend them for this kind of thinking in the episode. So Riley kind of gets the idea that because everybody got essentially poisoned by the cake and these toothaches, that they have to work out an antidote. They don't immediately assume that if you destroy the monster, the toothaches will go away. So that's fine. But the thing is, I don't know how they're kind of going about it. They're like, 2 bites here, and they also ate the icing. On this one, they ate 3 bites. And Chase makes a good point. He's like, they ate it, and they got these toothaches. So why doesn't Morgan just go ahead and take the cake and analyze it, the chemical composition and whatnot and stuff like that? Why do we have to go through this whole process of counting the cakes and how many bites this person took? Plus, by the end of the episode, we don't see the other people who were afflicted by this being, recovering from it. Because did destroying Cavity actually resolve the problem? Or did they do an antidote off screen? That seems to be dangling up there. Something else I do kind of like about this episode is Riley's motivation, because, again, I like that they're giving him motivations. The fact that when he fought Fury and he couldn't stand toe-to-toe with him, he feels like, yeah, I need to train and get better and all that. Well, I like that. That's good motivation. However, that is the same kind of motivation that we get all the time, but I do appreciate the fact that they kind of put it in there. So that's kind of the bulk of what I have to say about this episode. Again, the theme, it's a good theme. It can be deconstructed in a lot of ways, but for the purposes of this episode, I don't think that's as big a deal, basically. Yes, Chase works of his instincts, Riley's analytical, they both get to the same point, they fight for the same goal. Good, I like that. But I do kind of wish that the overall plot was thought out a little bit more, and I do find it odd that we did bring over this kind of, for lack of a better term, goofy plot from the Japanese series. I kind of think that we should have gone in a different direction. I think given, because it seems to me that given the Rangers' cavities is a plot that we left back in Turbo, that past Turbo, once we got into space and Lost Galaxy, that wouldn't be a plot that we would be revisiting anymore. It'd be kind of like we have another episode where Sledge sends down the monster to make the Rangers eat and eat and eat forever. That's one of those goofy, silly plots from the Mighty Morphin era that just doesn't fit nowadays, I think. So it's kind of odd, and I will also credit this. I was totally expecting the Ankylodon Zord, or Ankylozord, or whatever it is, to actually appear in this episode, because that's what happened in the Japanese footage. They completely cut him out and did the plot without it. So it makes me wonder, when is that Zord, when is the Aqua Ranger actually going to show up into the series, particularly when you consider it's 40 episodes and we're 6 episodes in. Are we going to kind of stretch this out? Is it going to be condensed? What's going to go ahead and happen as we continue? But that's all I really got about the episode. So, hey guys, what'd you think about it? Give me your points. Was there something I didn't cover that probably should have been? But I want to thank you guys for listening. Next time we will come up with the next episode. Let Sleeping Zords Lie. And until then, the tavern is now closed.